Get ready to dive into one of the most terrifying stories you've ever heard: 100 Men vs. 1 Gorilla horror stories. Today, we will explore not just a hypothetical debate that went viral on the internet, but also real accounts inspired by true events that show just how frighteningly powerful and deadly gorillas can be. Imagine for a moment 100 men, strong, coordinated, and armed only with their own hands and courage, facing a single silverback gorilla, a creature with crushing strength, remarkable intelligence, and instincts so sharp that any human mistake could be fatal within seconds. This video reveals encounters that defy logic, from hunters in remote African villages being pursued by these giant creatures, to volunteers from conservation organizations being deceived by poachers and forced to act as bait so a gorilla could be illegally killed, showcasing the cruelest side of human intervention in nature. And we cannot forget the reports from zoos, where the obsession of some caretakers almost ended in tragedy when they entered gorilla enclosures, confronting the immeasurable strength of these animals. Experiences that make it clear that a gorilla, even alone, represents a force of nature no human can underestimate. The most disturbing aspect is not only the physical strength of these creatures, but also the way humanity has been cruel to them, destroying families, invading territories, and treating majestic animals as commodities or entertainment, reminding us that often the true horror lies not in what gorillas can do to humans, but in what humans have done and continue to do to gorillas. Throughout the video, you will encounter scenes and accounts that challenge any concept of human safety or control, where courage, fear, and instinct collide in absolutely brutal ways. And some of the most controversial stories include deaths, mutilations, and abuses that few have dared to document. If you truly want to understand how dangerous and impressive a gorilla can be, stay with me until the end, because the final revelation will leave you shocked, stir your imagination, and likely change forever the way you view these creatures. And if you enjoy exploring the darker and more mysterious side of wildlife, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps YouTube understand that you want more content like this, allowing more people to discover these terrifying stories. What surprised me most during the making of this video was realizing how a gorilla's strength and intelligence can surpass even 100 men, while at the same time, human cruelty can be even more shocking than any animal attack. So stay with me, observe every detail, and get ready to witness the true terror that can arise when a human dares to face the pure and ancient power of a gorilla. The video dives deeply into the terrifying and viral debate known as 100 men versus 1 silverback gorilla, an absurd hypothetical that, despite seeming like just an internet joke, reveals something far darker and more disturbing about human nature and the true power of these wild creatures. From the very first moment, the narrative abandons any trace of humor or fantasy and transforms into a chilling plunge into the brutal reality of human-gorilla encounters, showing that any attempt at confrontation would be a death sentence. The video weaves together real stories and accounts inspired by true events that expose the crushing strength, instinctive fury, and almost supernatural capacity for destruction that a gorilla can exert over the human body. Each account serves as a macabre piece of evidence that a single silverback gorilla is more than just an animal. It is a force of nature, a living mass of muscle, speed, and primal instinct that surpasses everything we know as human strength. The first story, set in the humid forests of Uganda, follows a young hunter who, venturing out alone for the first time to prove his worth, encounters something that will mark him forever. The silence of the forest is broken by a heavy sound. The scent of danger fills the air, and suddenly the colossal shadow of a gorilla emerges before him. Fear paralyzes him, the air thickens, and in the blink of an eye, he realizes how insignificant he is before that giant with wild eyes. The terror escalates days later when the young man's best friend, attempting to replace his shame with honor, ends up torn apart by the same beast. His body, found in pieces, stands as living proof that a gorilla's strength is not merely physical, it is a brutal demonstration of the jungle's supremacy over man. Next, the video delves into an even darker story, set in the heart of the Congo, where a supposed animal conservation group is revealed to be a band of disguised poachers. A volunteer is deceived and used as human bait to lure a gorilla, while armed men prepare to kill the animal and sell its meat on the black market. The horror reaches its peak when the plan succeeds. The gorilla is coldly killed, and the man is forced to pose for photos atop the lifeless body of the animal, a grotesque portrait of human cruelty. The scene silently indicts the real monster of the story. Not the gorilla, but man. Human violence and greed prove far wilder than any beast of the forest. Finally, the video presents an equally horrifying account in a completely different setting, a zoo, supposedly a safe and controlled environment. An employee, obsessed with gorillas, believes he can connect with them peacefully. His obsession drives him to madness, and he decides to enter the enclosure of an adult gorilla, convinced he can tame it with empathy and courage. The result is carnage. In seconds, the animal crushes him against the ground with indescribable violence, breaking bones and tearing flesh with terrifying ease. The attack is so swift and devastating that the other staff barely have time to react. Even with tranquilizers, the gorilla demonstrates near superhuman resistance, making it clear that its strength does not belong to the same level as our species. The video concludes with a dark and inescapable message. The debate of 100 men versus one gorilla is more than fantasy. It is a metaphor for human arrogance and the illusion that we dominate nature. The reality is that no number of unarmed men could face the concentrated strength, predatory instinct, and brutality of a single gorilla. In the end, the true horror is not only in the idea of confrontation, but in the revelation that, even knowing the power of these creatures, we continue to try to destroy, exploit, and subjugate them. The video closes, leaving a feeling of discomfort and reflection. If the monster of the story truly exists, perhaps it does not dwell in the forests, but within ourselves. In a remote village in Uganda, surrounded by dense forests and shrouded in an almost mystical atmosphere, lives a young man who carries the weight of an ancestral tradition, becoming a hunter. From a young age, he had been trained by the elders to track, hunt, and protect his people, but within him always lived a silent fear. A constant sense that the forest harbored something far more terrifying than any animal they knew. When the day finally comes for him to hunt alone for the first time, the air feels heavier, the silence denser, as if the jungle itself is watching him. He sets out at dawn, spear in hand, heart racing, cold sweat streaming down his palms. Every noise among the trees makes him shudder. A breaking branch, a whisper of the wind, the distant echo of an animal's scream, all serve as reminders that in this place, he is not the predator, but the prey. Suddenly, the metallic scent of damp earth mixes with a strong, almost unbearable odor like sweat and old blood. He stops, feeling the air vibrate with a deep, distant sound, and then among the shadows, a colossal figure rises. A silverback gorilla. The ground seems to tremble under the weight of the creature. Muscles ripple beneath its dark skin, its chest inflates, and its gaze, that gaze, is something no man could withstand without feeling the deepest dread. The young man freezes. The gorilla advances slowly, studying him, its heavy breathing sounding like thunder among the trees. In an instant, it lets out a roar that tears through the forest's silence, so violent that the young man's body shakes uncontrollably. The spear slips from his hands, and he runs. He runs without thinking, stumbling, gasping, feeling the hot breath of the beast behind him. By sheer luck, he manages to hide among the roots of a massive fig tree, muffling his sobs and the sound of his own heartbeat. For long minutes, or perhaps hours, the gorilla lingers nearby, sniffing the air, striking the ground, testing if the prey still moves. Only when the sound fades into the distance does the young man dare to breathe again. His whole body trembles, his soul seems ripped away. He returns to the village before sunset, without game, without a spear, only terror etched on his face. The elders call him a coward, humiliate him, and deprive him of food until he proves his worth. Shame consumes him, but it is fear that paralyzes him. It is then that his best friend, determined to defend him and restore his honor, decides to hunt in the same place where the gorilla appeared. "I will bring back game and the elders' forgiveness," he says before leaving, with a smile the young man will never forget. The sun sets, night falls, and the friend does not return. Hours stretch like centuries. When the next morning arrives, the village forms a group to search for him. Overcome with guilt, The young man leads the way through the forest, which now seems more alive, more aware of their presence. And then, at the very spot where the terror began, he finds the truth. In the middle of a small clearing, the grass stained with dried blood, his friend's body is scattered in pieces. The torso on one side, an arm dangling from a tree, the head thrown to the ground. Silence is absolute, as if even the birds respect that horror. The young man falls to his knees, unable to scream. The brutality is unimaginable. No human being could have caused this. The silverback gorilla had fulfilled its role as king of the jungle, and the lesson was etched in flesh and fear. No man, however brave, can challenge such a pure and ancient force. From that day on, the young man never returned to the forest. In every nightmare, he sees the gorilla's gaze, cold, intelligent, almost human, and the distant sound of its breathing echoes in his mind as a living memory. What began as a rite of passage became a curse. The forest, the elders say, keeps its secrets, and some of them should remain forever in the dark. In 1910, in the dense, suffocating jungles at the heart of Central Africa, a story began to circulate among the local inhabitants and later crossed oceans, becoming one of the darkest and most disturbing legends of the relationship between man and the wild. The protagonist of this tale was a man named Uganda, a simple lumberjack, known for his courage and endurance, but also for a trait common among humans: ignorance in the face of the power of what they do not understand. That year, Uganda had ventured alone into the forest to cut bamboo, a routine task for someone who lived off what the jungle provided. But that day, the wind was heavier, the air warmer, and even the birds seemed absent, as if the forest itself sensed what was about to happen. Axe in hand, he entered a clearing surrounded by twisted trees and shadows that seemed to move on their own. The dry sound of each strike echoed across the hills until a different noise was heard, a deep crack, followed by a guttural roar that made the air tremble. Uganda had disturbed something that should never have been disturbed: a family of gorillas. Amid the thick vegetation, bright eyes watched him with ancestral fury. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the roar itself, a silence filled with hatred, instinct, and pain. Suddenly, the foliage exploded before him, and a colossal figure emerged. The silverback gorilla, the dominant male, appeared with a presence that seemed to defy logic itself. Each step made the ground vibrate, muscles rippled like taut steel cables, and the dark, almost human gaze reflected something beyond mere anger. It was the fury of a father, a protector. Uganda tried to run, but there was no escape. Within seconds, the beast reached him. The sound that followed was indescribable. Bones breaking, flesh tearing, a muffled scream lost in the suffocating forest. The gorilla grabbed him by the shoulders and threw him against a tree with enough force to split the trunk in two. It is said the impact was so brutal that the man barely had time to comprehend what was happening. But the attack did not end there. Driven by a primal instinct for destruction, the animal seized the body and, in a single movement, tore off his head. When the villagers found Uganda the next day, guided by the smell of blood that hung in the air, the scene was nightmarish. The mutilated body lay among leaves soaked in dried blood, the severed neck still exuding a metallic odor. The head, lying a few meters away, had eyes still open, glazed, frozen in the exact moment of terror. Around them, deep marks in the ground and trees indicated the unimaginable strength of the animal. Witnesses said the clearing was completely destroyed, as if a storm had passed through. For many, it was more than an animal attack. It was punishment. A cruel reminder that there are places where man's dominion does not exist, where the forest still speaks, and its creatures hold the power to decide who lives and who dies. The name Uganda became a warning, a whisper among the villagers, a story told by firelight to scare young people who ventured too far into the jungle. They said that on the dampest nights, when the mist covered the ground and the rain drums hit the leaves, one could hear a distant roar echoing through the mountains, the same roar that preceded Uganda's death. Some claim the man's spirit still wandered the forest, headless, searching for what he had lost, while the gorilla, now a demon of the jungle, remained guarding the massacre site, attacking anyone who dared cross its territory. Over the years, the tale became one of the earliest known accounts of a man supposedly killed by a gorilla, a story that transcended time and fueled the imagination of scientists, explorers, and the superstitious. But for those who know the jungle, it is more than a myth. It is a reminder that nature does not forgive, and that there are forces so ancient and powerful that a single glance can mean the end. The case of Uganda is not just a legend, it is a warning echo, a scar etched in the memory of the forest, a silent scream that continues to resonate in the shadows of time, reminding all who dare challenge what cannot be tamed. On a foggy morning deep in the humid forests of the Democratic Republic of Congo, a young volunteer named Elias woke up unaware that this would be the last day he would see sunlight with innocence. He had joined a local conservation group, driven by the desire to protect wildlife, especially gorillas, creatures he had always admired for their strength, intelligence, and almost human gaze. But in that jungle where the green seemed to swallow the sky, the line between hero and victim was thin, and hope could easily turn into a trap. Elias had been contacted by a group claiming to be forest rangers, who said they had discovered a trap left by illegal hunters. They asked for his help to document the site and alert the authorities. Innocent and determined, he agreed, unaware that he was stepping into a cruel game, where he would be the bait and the prize was not justice, but blood. The group led him deeper into the forest, guiding him along narrow, fog-filled paths until they reached a silent clearing. The air was heavy, saturated with a metallic smell of earth, sweat, and death. Elias set up his camera, trying to capture images of what he believed was a legitimate environmental protection operation. That's when he realized the mistake. The men with him were not rangers, they were hunters, and the cold look in their eyes betrayed the truth. Before he could react, they pushed him to the center of the clearing and ordered him to stay still. The rustling of the foliage sent chills down his spine. From the dense vegetation, a silverback gorilla emerged, enormous and majestic, its eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and threat. Elias froze, heart racing, feeling the ground vibrate under the creature's weight. Behind him, the hunters readied their rifles, whispering orders. Elias tried to scream, but one of the men silenced him with the cold barrel of a gun pressed against the back of his neck. "Stay still," the hunter whispered, "or you die first." The gorilla approached slowly, chest rising with each heavy breath, muscles pulsing under its thick skin. When it stood on its hind legs, Elias smelled the strong scent of the animal, a mixture of moss, blood, and jungle. It was a force of nature, alive, raw, uncontrollable. Then the shot rang out. The sound was deafening, tearing through the forest's silence like a verdict. The gorilla staggered, letting out a roar that seemed to come from the bowels of the earth, and fell before him. The second shot came immediately, and the giant body collapsed completely, life draining from eyes now staring silently at Elias. The hunters advanced on the still warm carcass, laughing, cutting the skin, removing the flesh with sharp machetes. Blood gushed in streams, staining the ground and the young volunteer's face. He cried, paralyzed, while filming everything unwillingly, his camera still on, capturing the raw horror of what should never have happened. When the hunters finished, they left the gorilla's mutilated body covered with leaves and walked away, taking parts of the animal and the traumatized young man with them. Days later, Elias managed to escape and deliver the footage to the authorities, but the damage was already done. The video, showing in detail the gorilla's slaughter and the terror in its final gaze, leaked online. Within hours, it went viral, a moving nightmare seen by millions. People reacted with disgust, fear, outrage, but nothing erased the sound of the gunshots, the final roar, or the vacant stare of the fallen animal. The footage exposed the horror of the wild meat trade, revealing that behind the words bushmeat and subsistence hunting hid an industry of blood and despair. Elias never returned to the forest. It is said that he still wakes at night, sweating, hearing the sound of the dying gorilla's roar, feeling the creature's gaze haunting him in the darkness. And many say that in that cursed clearing, where blood mixed with the soil, heavy footsteps can still be heard, as if something or someone never truly left. The forest remembers, and the horror remains, recorded not only on cameras, but in the soul of anyone who dared to witness human savagery firsthand. It was a hot, heavy morning at the Madrid Zoo, the kind of day when the air feels denser and the silence carries a sense of foreboding. Among the staff, one name stood out: Miguel Serrano, an animal caretaker who had devoted years of his life to the gorillas in the central enclosure. But his devotion had turned into something dark, a silent obsession that grew with each passing day. He believed the gorillas understood him, that there was a spiritual connection between them, as if he could break the boundary between man and beast. His colleagues found him strange, always watching the animals for hours, whispering words no one could understand, staring at the dominant male, a silverback named Kumba, with a mix of fascination and fear. One morning, Miguel arrived before opening hours, when the zoo was still asleep and only the distant sounds of animals cut through the silence. Security cameras later showed his body crossing the gates, eyes fixed and determined, like someone going to meet the inevitable. He dropped the radio, removed his security uniform, and climbed the enclosure fence, ignoring the warnings and danger signs. The dirty water of the moat chilled his feet, but he did not hesitate. Within seconds, he was inside. Kumba, the silverback gorilla, lifted his head. His dark eyes met Miguel's, and for a moment, the caretaker believed there was recognition, perhaps even acceptance. He took a step forward, murmuring something about trust, friendship, and understanding. The gorilla, however, did not move. The silence was almost sacred, broken only by the distant caw of a crow. But then something changed. A noise from the nearby females, a small alarm signal, filled the air with tension. Kumba rose slowly, his back glistening in the weak sun, and let out a low growl, deep, vibrating like the sound of a mountain about to collapse. Miguel took another step. "It's okay," he said. "I trust you." What happened next occurred in seconds, but it was forever captured on the zoo's cameras. The gorilla advanced with brutal force, the ground trembling under his steps. In a swift motion, he grabbed Miguel by the shoulders and threw him against a rock. The impact sounded like thunder. The man tried to roll, to scream, but Kumba was already upon him, beating his chest, roaring in fury. The heavy claws struck the caretaker repeatedly, crushing bones and tearing flesh and tissue. Blood spread across the ground, staining the enclosure red, which had once seemed just a cage. Guards ran in panic, trying to distract the gorilla with tranquilizer darts and loud noises, but Kumba did not stop. Each strike was stronger, more desperate, more animalistic. He did not attack out of pure anger, but instinct, perceiving a violation of his territory, a threat to his natural hierarchy. When they finally managed to restrain him, Miguel was unrecognizable. His body trembled, covered in deep cuts, his face disfigured. The doctors who treated him said it was a miracle he was still alive. He spent months in a coma, and when he awoke, he never spoke of the incident. It is said that sometimes in the hospital, he would whisper the gorilla's name as if he still saw him at the edge of his bed watching from the shadows. The case shocked Spain and the world. The zoo reinforced its security measures, but the story spread like a curse, that of a man who believed he could become part of the jungle only to discover the price of human arrogance in the face of nature's primitive power. Some visitors swear that on nights when the zoo is empty, the gorilla enclosure still echoes with strange noises, dull thuds, long moans, the distant sound of something moving with contained fury. And some say that Kumba was never the same after that day. He would spend hours staring at the spot where the man fell, as if waiting for him to return, or as if he could still hear the sound of his final scream. The Madrid attack left a scar not only on Miguel's flesh, but on the very soul of the zoo. A reminder that behind glass and bars, there are creatures belonging to a world man will never understand. A world where one wrong step is enough to awaken the true face of the beast. Throughout the stories presented in the video, real, disturbing, and soaked in fear, a brutal truth emerges from the shadows. Gorillas are forces of nature that defy human comprehension. Creatures endowed with almost supernatural physical strength, capable of crushing bones like dry twigs and moving stones no man could lift. Gorillas are not monsters, but primal reflections of a power humans will never possess. Each story revealed in the video is an open wound, a terrifying reminder that in the face of these creatures, humans are fragile, slow, and vulnerable. A single blow from a gorilla can shatter the human body, crush ribs, break necks, reduce muscles and tendons to shapeless flesh. 100 unarmed men facing a single silverback gorilla. It's an image that sends shivers down the spine, a fantasy of bravery that quickly dissolves in the reality of the jungle. The gap between human and animal strength is immense. While a man's muscles serve to build, a gorilla's serve to survive, and that survival comes with an instinctive fury that knows no mercy. The video reveals that the true villain in these stories is not the gorilla, but man. It is human hands that hold the weapons, the traps, the steel nooses that close around innocent legs and necks. It is humans who invade sacred territories, who tear entire families from the forest to display them in cages, who turn magnificent beings into trophies or commodities. The gorilla's ferocity is merely a response, a desperate cry against the brutality humans disguise as civilization. Each roar, each attack, each scene of blood is not an act of malice, but of defense. The real horror, as the video suggests with images that linger in the mind, lies in the human gaze, cold, calculating, capable of killing for profit, amusement, or vanity. The video does not merely showcase the strength of gorillas, it places it side by side with human cruelty, and the contrast is terrifying. The cameras capture destroyed human bodies, yes, but also gorillas chained, wounded, with eyes full of suffering that seems almost human. The viewer is forced to confront a disturbing question. Who is truly the monster in this story? The animal fighting to protect its family, or the man who hunts, deceives, and destroys without remorse? As the images and accounts accumulate, the narrative becomes a dark mirror of the human condition. The jungle, with all its natural brutality, seems more honest than the civilized world. The gorilla kills to live, humans kill by choice, and it is in that choice that true terror resides. The video, with its dense atmosphere and almost hypnotic rhythm, leaves the viewer uncomfortable. Not from fear of the gorilla, but from the realization that humanity has long lost the right to consider itself superior. With every reported attack, the audience is reminded that nature does not forget, that spilled blood returns as an echo among the trees and shadows of the African mountains. The distant roar of a gorilla no longer sounds like a threat, but a curse, a living reminder of everything humans have destroyed in the name of power. When the closing credits appear, the silence is almost unbearable. The message is clear, etched into the mind like a scar. In a direct confrontation, 100 men would never defeat a gorilla, but in a moral confrontation, humanity lost long ago. The true horror is not in what gorillas can do to humans, but in what humans have done to gorillas, and continue to do, day after day, with the same cold detachment with which they watch nature die. It is a terror without ghosts or monsters, only mirrors, and in them, the most terrifying reflection of all, humanity itself. And so we reach the end of 100 Men vs. 1 Gorilla horror stories. If you felt that chill down your spine and realized just how powerful and terrifying a single gorilla can be, then you already know that reality often surpasses any hypothetical debate. But before you go, I need your support. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps YouTube show our videos to more people who, just like you, love scary and suspenseful stories. If you want to support our work even further, consider sending a super thanks. Any contribution makes a huge difference and allows us to continue bringing high-quality content. And if you can't, that's totally fine. Just leave a comment, sharing your thoughts on the video, your theories, or even which story gave you the biggest chills. We love reading every comment, and it helps our channel grow too. And before you leave, don't forget, watch the video appearing on your screen now. It's even more intriguing and captivating than this one, and I promise you won't regret it. The adventure and suspense continue, so click and get ready for more horror and mystery.